In May of 2022, Dave McIntyre had accepted a invitation to do an online training for some special forces guys through a friend of mine who's still in the military. And so Mac wanted to talk about friction fire. So we filmed some footage back in the valley here right next to our office so he could demonstrate how to make fire for these special forces guys that he was going to do a Zoom call training with. So the footage I'm going to share with you is him going through the process of making friction fire with some added bonus material in there as well.
Just looking at the quality of it, doesn't seem to be very high quality. This is a ceramic bearing block or socket, which is, it's actually baked clay, and it's got a glazed divot in there, which is very fast. And this is the kind of thing you're looking to create. If you can create this by finding a rock which has a natural divot in it. Some seashells are stiff enough but they can also break as you're using them and damage your hands. So that can be a problem. Anything you find, like I've used aluminum cans, but the idea is you need something which you can put pressure on that spindle from above that has as friction-free surface in there in that divot as you can get it. And you can lubricate that sometimes with, take a green leaf and lubricate it. You can take oil from your head or your nose or lubricate the bearing at that point. You just never want to touch anything oily to the tip of the spindle where you're going to make that fire.
Because you want maximum friction on the bottom minimum friction on top.
Moisture content, there's a lot of variables here. If your wood is damp, like on Vancouver Island, I had lots of cedar, but it was all waterlogged all the way through. So if that wood is damp, has any kind of moisture content in the wood, then it's not going to happen. Or you might have to, drill on it to try and drive that moisture away, and you might get a coal. But using dense wood, damp wood, wood with resin in it, it won't work. Okay. You will just frustrate yourself. So, okay, now here's the process. I got. What I'm looking for here is just to seat all the knife cuts now are gone off that spindle, and it's got a nice smooth surface. And I've also got a full diameter hole there, and I now know exactly where I have to cut my notch to collect all this powder, which will eventually make the coal. Make the coal. Now that I've got the full circle burn there, I need to create the notch, because that notch is where all the burning ember is going to form in that notch. It'll start out collecting powder just like sawdust in the bottom of the notch, and then as you'll see more smoke being generated, it'll actually light the top layer. It'll actually have little burning pieces of sawdust start accumulating on top of that pile, which will eventually turn the entire pile into a coal.
Nice.
If you let it. And
all right.
maybe. You'll know you have a coal if you take it off and it continues to smoke.
Okay.
So, man. Okay, there. It's continuing to smoke, which means that the coal is actually lit. And I can take a break now because that's not going anywhere. And you have that one little ember now. The Bible says, fan in the flame that ember that God placed in you. This is how fire was made at that time. Actually, they used flint and steel, which is much easier. But
The verse that Mac just quoted there is 2 Timothy 1:6. For this reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands.
I'm gonna let that coal grow a little bit. And once I get my breath back, because I have to blow in that tinder bundle. So.
Well, and I think a mistake I'd want to do is I'd want to put that in there right away, right? And that would be bad.
This is the part you can take your breath. You can take
Okay.
take a breather. It's like a cigarette glowing there.
Okay.
And that powder, that black spot right there. That's your coal. Whew. All right, now it's a delicate operation to transfer that into the tinder bundle. Okay, here comes the fun part. You want to fold your material around it. You don't want to crush it or snuff it out. And you got to blow.
That looks good. I see flame.
There's flame. Now it's burning. Now, you would already have to have your whole fireplace set up
Yep.
to be able to put that in the middle of it and start your fire. Like you see here, it's not a gimmick. Now, full disclosure, I was out of wind. So I took a lighter and just lit the top of that coal to show you what it was.
So Mac, as a survival expert, had trouble getting coal started from his friction fire. So he pulled a bic out and kind of got a little bit hotter to be able to demonstrate what it was supposed to look like.
This has obviously produced lots of coals in the past. With a different spindle. This spindle didn't come from this wood. And I don't think, I don't know, maybe I'm just out of shape. But the technique is solid. That's exactly how it's done. But it doesn't always work, even when you get it all right. And you have to know the system enough to diagnose what is wrong. Okay, why isn't it work? Why isn't it working? Am I not getting enough string tension? Is my bow too flexible? Am I robbing too much friction in the hand socket? Is the wood the right type? For boot camp on alone, it was one of our tasks. We had to make friction fire, and I found wood I thought would work, but it wasn't. I had to scrap that, and then I found some cedar, and cedar worked wonderfully. But I actually got it done in the time they gave us, and that was going from knife, collecting all the materials out of the bush, and creating fire. That's what you have to be able to do to own this skill. Okay, to be able to take your blade and your knowledge of your area and collect all those materials and get them all together, build the system and make it work. And even then, there's no guarantee.
Okay, so question. These guys are watching this at home. They want to try this at home. Do they go, I mean, foraging is obviously the most hardcore, but if I was going to go to Lowe's and buy a handful of things, what do
I've never done it that way. And I've heard people have used wood off the pallets and make that work.
It's typically really hardwood. Yeah.
Pine is not good usually because it has resins in it. Your woods in North America that were good. Basswood is excellent.
Okay.
Willow is really good. Poplar.
What
cedar.
about rough cut cedar from Lowe's? I mean, they sell it.
Cedar. If you get cedar at Lowe's, that's perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, if you get any kind of cedar, and like I said, just make the board and the spindle off the same piece of wood.
Yep.
You want a. That's what kind of smoky. Let's make sure this is out. Bury all this. Yeah, rough cut cedar would be fine, as long as it's not like treated with anything.
Yep.
Yeah, I've only done this with wilderness wood. In other countries, Embaúba in Brazil is what we would use. It's one of the 2 trees in our forest that actually made friction fire. The other one I can find it, but I don't know what its name is. But any kind of wood that you can leave that mark on with your finger,
Yep.
It has to be dry. And for the spindle, you want the spindle to be maybe an inch thick.
Okay.
That's about it. And the board, you can use a thinner board, but the idea being, if you get it right, you're going to make more than one coal out of each hole.
Yeah.
Okay, you can make 3 or 4 coals. Like you saw, that was, what, 4 attempts, and we're about halfway through.
Yeah.
But that's the process.
More durable.
You create the flat board, and you want it nice and flat so it sits and doesn't rock. A spindle, the correct body position, where your foot, your knee is, you're bladed this way, okay? And I'm going to hold the spindle. I'm going to lay down on my thigh. Just go ahead and put the board there. I'm going to lay down on my thigh. I want my upper body resting on my thigh and my forearm braced against my shin, with my wrist as close to my leg as possible. And you want this isn't vertical, but that's the other thing. You want the system to be nice and vertical when you do it, so you don't drill out of the hole. And then with your stroke with the bow, you want a full stroke, and you don't want to scoop. You don't want to be doing this, swinging your arm. You have to keep that bow level and straight back and forth. And yeah, if you're pulling up, what'll happen is the string will be walking up and down if you're scooping.
Yep.
And that's going to rob a lot of your speed. You want it nice and straight with a full arm swing. And yeah, you put on a burst of speed. When you see a lot of smoke coming out there, you're not there yet. That'll be making that brown sawdust. When that starts to turn black, then you're getting close. And then that's when you put on a burst of speed, and you really give it all you're worth at that point. And sitting around all winter, I don't think I'm worth much right now. You guys are all these top-notch special forces guys. They got more muscle, all that muscle and everything.
They got plenty of muscle to start a fire.
If you want to see me doing that in shape, watch that high-tech friction fire. I get a coal in 17 seconds. And yes, I counted.
All right.
But it can be done. It's a great technique to learn, but one bic lighter outclasses all of this. Okay.
Yeah. Be prepared.
You want to see real quick the flint and steel?
Sure.
That's from the Iron Age all the way up until the mid 1800s. This was how fire was made. You would have the tinder bundle and all that, but you'd have a steel striker. This is very hard steel, and then you would have a flint and char cloth. That is charred lamp wick, and hopefully, yeah, I've already got my coal.
Like a pro.
Okay, now that you put in your tinder bundle and blow, but you saw how quick that was.
Oh, yeah,
and how energy efficient. Okay,
Yeah.
So your cowboy, he was carrying this in his pocket, and some pre-made tinder and char cloth. You have a small container like that. You put cotton cloth in there, close it up, put it in the fire. When it stops smoking, you pull it out, let it cool down, and you've got char cloth. And that any spark will turn it into a coal. And then you just put it in a tinder bundle and blow. And that's how quick fire is made, with it, without having to go resort to this.
Yeah. What was the most common carried fire starter on the show?
We all carry ferro rods.
Okay.
It would spark at I think it's like 3,000 degrees or something.
Nice.
That'll light all kinds of things on fire. But on the island, I used a ferro rod and shredded cedar bark, finely shredded cedar bark mixed with thick spruce resin. And if you're going to light a fire with a ferro rod, any kind of accelerant and fiber put together, like a medical kit, you got Neospor or the 3-in-1 ointment and gauze. Mix those together and hit it with a spark from your ferro rod. Poof, it'll go and it'll burn. Chapstick and a tampon. You know what I mean? It's in your wife's purse. You pull that apart, mix it together, and that'll take a spark from a ferro rod and make fire. But you can use pine resin and shredded bark is the same thing, and it goes up like a blob of napalm. I mean, it just burns.
Dude.
Dave McIntyre led his life dedicated to serving Jesus Christ. If you don't know Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, you can. All you have to do is pray to God, Lord, I know I have sin in my life, and that sin has a penalty. And Jesus paid the penalty for my sin on the cross, and I accept his forgiveness of my sins. And I choose to follow you all the days of my life. Praying that prayer brings forgiveness of sin, eternal salvation, and a life dedicated to holiness, different from the evil in this world. If you knew Mac, you knew his spirit was full with God himself speaking through Mac. Mac spoke his word and loved God deeply. Please comment in this video if you need more information about following Christ or Set Free Ministries.